once again, it's me. As I said before, I couldn't go to bed. I just had to get this done. I just got through with the ASV, 2 parts to that. The preface to the American Standard Version, and this is the preface to the Revised Standard Version. And I'm not sure what year it was. Revised AD 1952. This is a revision of a revision of a revision. This is a revision of this, which is a revision of the revised edition, revised version of the King James, 1881, 1985. This was 1901 because they revised the Americans to put their own things in. We put our own, our little committee people. They reverted back to some of the authorized version, but yet not the whole thing. And they left some of the revision in. And sometimes they put in their own stuff. So, that's a revision. And this is a revision of that. There's even more revisions of revisions of revisions. So, wait, okay, let me tell you like this. We got a revision here of the revised version. Okay? This is a revised version of American Standard Version. This is a revised version of the American Standard Version. Yeah, as well. So you got RSV is a revised version of American Standard Version, and also the ASV is a revision of American Standard Version. But there's another one called the New Revised Standard Version. Another revision. And then you also got this, which I marked down, the English Standard Version. It's crazy. They can't get it right, man. They can't get it right. Oh my. Okay, so let's just go to this one right here. I want to read you the preface to this one. I'm trying to hurry up. How many minutes we got? We got in here 3 minutes. 2:20. Okay, Revised Standard Version, 1952. The Old Testament was actually done. New Testament was in 1946. Old Testament 1952. Okay, so they did the New Testament first, and then the Old Testament. Basically, started in 1946. I had 8 years. The Revised Standard Version of the Bible is an authorized revision. Authorized revision. How is it authorized? Okay. Of the American Standard Version, published in 1901, which was it says it right here. Oh my gosh, which was a revision of a revision, which was a revision of the King James Version, published in 1611. The first English version of the Scriptures made by a direct translation from the original Hebrew and Greek, and the first to be printed was the work of William Tyndale. He met bitter opposition. He was accused of willfully perverting the meaning of the Scriptures, and his New Testaments were ordered to be burned as untrue translations. He was finally betrayed into the hands of his enemies, and in October 1536 was publicly executed and burned at the stake. Yet Tyndale's work became the foundation of subsequent English versions, notably those of Coverdale, 1535, Thomas Matthew, probably a pseudonym for John Rogers, 1537, the Great Bible, 1539, the Geneva Bible, 1560, and the Bishop's Bible, 1568. In 1582, a translation of the New Testament made from the Latin Vulgate by Roman Catholic scholars was published at Reims. The translators who made the King James Version, see they call it the King James Version here, just like they did in Revised Edition, took into account of all these preceding versions, and comparisons shows that it owes something to each of them. It kept felicitous phrases and apt expressions from whatever source, which had stood the test of public usage. It owed most especially in the New Testament to Tyndale. The King James Version had to compete with the Geneva Bible in popular use, but in the end it prevailed. Okay, I got to underline that. Where's the pen? In the end it prevailed, it says here. Well, guess what? It prevailed even to today, because this Bible is, I don't think it is, no it's not, because there's other successive revisions that are taking its place. It's no longer in print, so it has prevailed against every revision out there, because the only NIV sells the best selling, the King James is the most selling, and besides that, then there's the New King James Version. And let's see here. The King James, okay, I already read that. The King James Version became the authorized, oh, okay, I think it skipped a spot. Let me try to just read over this again. The King James Version had to compete with the Geneva Bible on proper use, but in the end it prevailed. Okay, and for more than 2.5 centuries, no other authorized translation of the Bible into English was made. That's right. The King James Version became the authorized version of the English-speaking peoples. No. It was the authorized version, and it was nicknamed the King James Version. The King James Version has with good reason been termed the noblest monument of English prose. Its revisers in 1881 expressed admiration for its simplicity, its dignity, its power, its happy turns of expression, the music of its cadences, and the felicities of its rhythm. And I remember reading it. It entered as no other book has into the making of the personal character and the public institutions of English-speaking peoples. We owe to it an incalculable debt. Now listen to this next sentence. Listen to this next paragraph. Hold your seats. Put your seatbelts on. And if you're a man like I am, I wish I had a toupee to hold on. Okay, but it beats it up. Then it praises it. Beats it up. Yet, the King James Version has grave defects. No, it doesn't. The Revised Version has grave defects. Why is it constantly being replaced if it doesn't have grave defects? You old people out there in the graves, why? Huh? Grave defects? No. King James, the Authorized Version that is, doesn't have grave defects. The Revised Versions do. The Revised editions do. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't be constantly replaced. They wouldn't be constantly revised. And we can see that every time they revised revised edition version into the American Standard Version for America. And then after that, they went to the from the ASV to what we have now, the RSV, and from the RSV to NRSV, from that the NASV, from that the ESV. Duh, 4 generations almost. Let me go ahead and try to read this. I know I got, boy, how many more minutes we got here? Okay, we're at 8 minutes into it. By the middle of the 19th century, the development of biblical studies and the discovery of many manuscripts more than ancient than those upon which the King James Version was based made it manifest that these defects are so many and so serious as to call for revision of the English translation. This is stupid. It's ridiculous of what they're saying here. The best thing to ever happen in English, now they're tearing it down. It's mistakes. It's full of mistakes. But yet the English people love it, and the cadences and its rhythm has meant so much. But it's full of mistakes. It's just oxymoron. Oh my gosh, let me shut up and read this thing. It manifests that these defects are so many, so serious to call for revision of the English translation. The task was undertaken by authority of the Church of England in 1870. The English Revised Version of the Bible was published in 1881 and 1885, and the American Standard Version, ASV, and its variant embodying the prefaces of the American scholars associated in the work, was published in 1901. Because of unhappy experience with unauthorized publications in the 2 decades between 1881 and 1901, which tampered with the text of the English Revised Version, I suppose that's where the copyright comes in the supposed interest of the American public, the American Standard Version was copyrighted. There we go. There we go. There it went. There it is. To protect the text from unauthorized changes. No, to put money in people's wallets. In 1928, this copyright was acquired by the International Council of Religious Education, and thus National Council of the Churches of Christ in the United States of America. Okay, and thus passed into the ownership of the churches of the United States and Canada, which were associated in the council through their boards of education and publication. Oh my gosh! The council appointed a committee of scholars to have charge of the text of the American Standard Version and to undertake an inquiry as to whether further revision was necessary. For more than 2 years, the committee worked upon the problem of whether or not revision should be undertaken, and if so, what should be its nature and extent. Or in the nature and extent. In the end, the decision was reached that there is need for a thorough revision of the version of 1901, which will stay as close to the Tyndale King James tradition, oh my gosh, as it can, in the light of our present knowledge of the Hebrew and Greek texts and their meaning on the one hand, and our present understanding of English on the other. In 1937, the revision was authorized by a vote of the council, and notice this, authorized by this church council. They're talking about the Division of Christian Education, the National Council of Churches of Christ in the United States of America. Oh my gosh. The revision was authorized to vote of the council, which directed that the resulting version should embody the best results of modern scholarship as to meaning of the scriptures and express this meaning in the English diction, which is designed for use in public and private worship and preserves those qualities which have been given to the King James Version. Those qualities of the King James Version and a supreme place in English literature. This book, authorized version, the Bible, the sweetest thing there is to God's Word, was placed as supreme in English language literature. And then they tear it down and says it had severe defects. How did they say it? Grave defects. Oxymoron. I just don't get it, yo. I don't get it. Stupid. These people were, believe, you know. What else we got? Okay, I'm trying to read one more page here. 32 scholars have served as members of the committee charged with making the revision, and they have secured the review and counsel of an advisory board of 50 representatives of cooperating denominations. The committee has worked in 2 sections, one on dealing with the Old Testament and one with the New Testament. Each section has submitted its work to the scrutiny of the members of the other section, and the charter of the committee requires that all changes be agreed upon by 2/3 vote of the total membership of the committee. The Revised Standard Version of the New Testament was published in 1946. The publication of the Revised Standard Version of the Bible containing the Old and New Testaments was authorized by vote of the National Council of Churches of Christ in the United States of America in 1951. Ironically, 340 years after the fact. The problem of establishing, King James, the correct Hebrew and Aramaic text of the Old Testament is very different from the corresponding problem of the New Testament for the ant forms of the text. For the New Testament, we have a large number of Greek manuscripts representing many variant forms of the text. Some of them were made only 2 or 3 centuries later than the original composition of the books. For the Old Testament, only late manuscripts survive all, with the exception of Dead Sea Scroll text of Isaiah and Habakkuk and some fragments of other books, based on a standardized form of the text established many centuries after the books were written. The present revision is based on the consonantal Hebrew and Aramaic text as fixed early in the Christian era and revised by Jewish scholars, the Masoretes, of the 6th to 9th centuries. The vowel signs which were added by the Masoretes are accepted also in the main, but were a more probable and convincing reading can be attained by assuming different vowels. This has been done. No notes are given in such cases because the vowels points are less ancient and reliable than the consonants. Departures from consonantal texts of the best manuscripts have been made only where it seems clear that errors in copying had been made before the text was standardized. Most of the corrections adopted are based on the ancient versions, translations into Greek, Aramaic, Syriac, and Latin, which were made before the time of the Masoretic revision, and therefore reflect earlier forms of the text. In every such instance, a footnote specifies the version or versions from which the correction has been derived, and also gives a translation of the Masoretic text. Sometimes it is evident that the text has suffered in transmission, but none of the versions provides a satisfactory restoration. Here we can only follow the best judgment of competent scholars as the most probable reconstruction of the original text. Such corrections are indicated in the footnotes by the abbreviation CN, and the translation of the Masoretic text is added. The discovery of the meaning of the text, once the best readings have been established, is aided by many new resources for understanding the original languages. Much progress has been made in the historical and comparative study of these languages. A vast quantity of writings in related Semitic languages, some of them only discovered, had greatly enlarged our knowledge of the vocabulary and grammar of Biblical Hebrew and Aramaic. Sometimes the present translation will be found to render a Hebrew word in its sense quite different from that of the traditional interpretation. It has not been felt necessary in such cases to attach a footnote, because no change in the text is involved, and it may be okay. I lost my spot. Alright, is involved, and it may be assumed that the new rendering was not adopted without convincing evidence. The analysis of religious texts from the ancient Near East has made clear the significance of ideas and practices recorded in the Old Testament. Many difficulties and obscurities, of course, remain. Where the choice between two meanings is particularly difficult or doubtful, we have given an alternative rendering in a footnote. If in the judgment of the committee the meaning of a passage is quite uncertain or obscure, either because of corruption in the text or because of inadequacy of our present knowledge of the language, that fact is indicated by a note. It should not be assumed, however, that the committee was entirely sure of or unanimous concerning every rendering not so indicated. To record all minority views was obviously out of the question. Now, almost done. Well, I got a full page, but almost done with one page. A major departure from the practice of American Standard Version is the rendering of the divine name, Tetragrammaton. The American Standard Version used the term Jehovah. The King James Version has employed this in 4 places, but everywhere else, except in 3 cases where it was employed as part of a proper name, used the English word Lord, or in certain cases God, printed in capitals. The present revision returns to the procedure of the King James Version, which follows the precedent of the ancient Greek and Latin translators and long established practice in the reading of the Hebrew Scriptures in the synagogue. While it is almost, if not quite, certain that the name was originally pronounced Yahweh, this pronunciation was not indicated with the Masoretes added vowel signs to the consonantal Hebrew text. Now we'll do part 2 of this. Just like the ASV, they also in RSV went back to some of the King James. They had a guilty conscience, evidently. They wanted to get back to some of it, even though they didn't go back to all of it. Guilty conscience. Does that surprise you, any of you, that they went back to the King James, to the Authorized Version? It doesn't surprise me one bit. Not a bit. Part 2 is coming up.